Does this ad make you want to laugh or cry?
It makes me want to do both. And that's why I actually think it's a really good ad.
Welcome to another episode of Campaign Experts React, where we break down political ads and media, explain what the people behind them are trying to accomplish, and decide whether or not they did a good job. I'm Jon Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama, and joining me today is Cornell Belcher, the founder of Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies, and a pollster that worked with the Obama campaign in 2008 and 2012. Cornell Belcher, welcome back to Campaign Experts React. How you been, man?
I've been well. It's morning in America again, Dan.
It's morning again in America.
The first videos we're going to watch are from the recent special election in New Mexico's 1st District. We'll look at an attack ad from Republican Mark Moores, and then the response ad from Democrat Melanie Stansbury. I want to set a little context for our viewers. This was a special election to replace Congresswoman Deb Haaland, who was nominated by President Biden to be the Secretary of the Interior. And this race is one that became sort of, in the national media, a test case for whether Democrats had a response to a Republican crime message. Stansbury won this election. She won it by a margin larger than President Biden won the district in 2020.
We need to pass the BREATHE Act in Congress.
Melanie Stansbury supports the most dangerous legislation in America as Albuquerque faces record numbers of homicides. Legislation that defunds and dismantles the police, empties every federal prison in 10 years. Murderers, rapists, and child molesters walking free.
We need to pass the BREATHE Act in Congress.
Stop the madness. Stop Melanie Stansbury before it's too late.
I'm Mark Moores, and I approve this message.
Gunshot detection, radios, rape kit technology. Melanie Stansbury delivered the tools we need to fight violent crime in Albuquerque. In fact, Melanie helped coordinate public safety funding for the entire metro area. These ads are lies.
Mark Moores opposed President Biden's American Rescue Plan, money for families and small businesses, and millions for local law enforcement. Yet Moores took nearly $2 million in PPP money for his own business.
I'm Melanie Stansbury, and I approve this message because New Mexico always comes first.
Do you agree with the consensus that this was a test case for how Democrats deal with the crime attacks from Republicans, the very false racially tinged crime attacks, I would say? And two, what did you think of these ads?
I think we need actually a more redder-leaning district for that to be a proper test. But the ad that the Republican ran, it was like the best of Republican hits historically. I mean, there was everything in that ad but Willie Horton.
For our younger viewers, Willie Horton is a reference to an ad that George H.W. Bush ran against Michael Dukakis. It was an ad so racist that every subsequent racist ad is called the Willie Horton ad.
Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend.
I saw the data in 2020 and coming in, and the defund stuff was potent. The defund stuff actually did have an impact. I saw it in the data. I was one of the people who were screaming, we have to respond to the defund. We can't allow them to define us. You know, there was issues with rising crime and people being locked down in COVID. So it was a right place for Republicans to try to drive fear around crime, and the statistics were beginning to sort of move. So it made all the sense in the world from the Republican standpoint to do what they do best, and is drive fear and sort of define us as being for dismantling the police department, right? And letting criminals run amok. You had to respond to it. Her response was spot on, is in fact defining what she is actually for, and then pivoting to him.
And one thing we know about crime attacks from the 80s and the 90s from Republicans is it doesn't matter so much what's happening in your own community. They're often most powerful in the places where crime is not up. It is going to leave that urban area or wherever else and come to your community.
They want to destroy our country. They're going to destroy our suburbs.
That's also why the immigration message is so powerful in places with no immigration. This should give Democrats some confidence that there are ways to deal with this attack. I don't think there was a situation where Mark Moores was winning this race, but had he overperformed, right, or performed better than Deb Haaland did in 2020, that would have given a sense that the message had gained credence over time. And so I think the results are a positive data point to the credit of the Stansbury campaign. She never walked away from talking about racial justice.
And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that the system is really broken, that people are literally dying.
There is a real fear that some Democrats will see this and they will panic and say defund the police is terrible, therefore I'm going to run as Republican light. Where Republicans are very successful with Democrats is tricking us into running away from our best messages out of fear, and from running away from our allies and our base out of fear of what angers their base.
Can I underline one thing that you said there, which I think is critically important? Voters tend to think that, well, Democrats don't really stand for anything, or they're not strong. And that's the point that you're making about where she didn't run away from it, right? She stood her ground. This is what I believe, and then defended it. And too often, I think the point that you're making has hurt the Democratic brand more broadly in ways that we're still trying to recover from.
The next video we're going to watch is an ad from Ted Budd, a North Carolina Republican candidate for Senate, recently endorsed by none other than Donald Trump.
All right, cue the liberal agenda crusher.
I'm Ted Budd, and I'm a small businessman who was so fed up with the liberals' attacks on our faith, our families, and our way of life that I ran for Congress to stand and fight alongside Donald Trump to drain the swamp and to take our country back. But you don't have to take my word for it.
A warrior, a friend, really helps out whenever we need it. He's there. Ted Budd.
I believe in freedom, capitalism, and putting America first. And that whole defund the police thing is crazy.
Cut! Ted, you're gonna trigger the liberals with all that stuff, man.
Yeah, but the only trigger warning around here is keep your finger off it until you're ready to fire. We all know that Joe Biden is a weak leader who won't stand up to the radical left. Today, the U.S. Senate is the last line of defense against becoming a woke socialist wasteland. And I'm running to stop that, period. You know, I think we can skip the shooting part. I own a gun store. They know where I stand.
Does this ad make you want to laugh or cry?
It makes me want to do both. And that's why I actually think it's a really good ad. One of the things we talk about in politics is candidate presence. He is really good to camera. I think for a Republican, this ad is sexy. Like, it starts off with a cultural zinger, and some of us from the South, the big monster trucks crushing the liberals. Culturally, it's beautiful. And then he takes on faith, family, capitalism, and they work in Donald Trump in there. And here's the thing, Dan, that I think is really important for our viewers to understand. And it's really the difference between a lot of times Republicans and Democrats and sort of their communications. He's defining himself by what he's against. And he's not talking about, well, if I'm the Senate, I'm going to pass, X legislation to make college more affordable, or I'm going to do. No, he's defining himself by what he's against. And he's defining himself by these scary, radical socialist liberals. And again, funny, defund the police comes up again. It's really quintessential Republicanism these days, and actually probably even historically, and it is more about, I'm going to protect us from them. And he worked in that he's a small business owner, but also a gun shop owner. It's all the cultural touchstones that I think are important to a certain segment of voters in the South, and I think it makes him more likable. Now, I think we progressives spend a lot of time trying to make our candidates more likable by their policy positions. This guy comes off as more likable because I think regular conservative voters will look at him and go, yeah, that guy, I get that guy. And he didn't say anything about his policy positions. For what it is, I think it was a sexy ad. I think it's effective.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We are not the audience for this ad.
Yeah.
Swing voters not the audience. This is an ad running in a Republican primary where he's trying to get Donald Trump voters. He wants people who wear MAGA hats to vote for him. Two, and you make this point, it's so critical. Democrats pick their candidates based on who they think can deliver on their hopes. Republicans pick their candidates based on who they think can best protect them from their fears. That is conservatism dating back to pre-Ronald Reagan, which is America is changing. That change is not going to be good for you, conservative, white, Christian man mostly. That message is powerful, and it's powerful with more people than we think it is. A thing we have to do is make more ads that don't look like political ads. Republicans have actually gotten pretty good at that in the Trump era. Every candidate now has these intro videos, and the goal is to go viral so that you will get donations, right? And the Democratic ones are beautiful, and they're inspirational. There's like the one that Mark Kelly had, the Amy McGrath one in her congressional race, Randy Bryce, who was going to run against Paul Ryan, was another one. They go viral. We pour money into them. But they look like political ads. They are basically 60 to 90-second versions of convention videos. And the Republican ads are designed to go viral in part by triggering us as liberals to share them in outrage or to ridicule them.
I blow up government spending.
A lot more work and thought has to be done on our side about how we navigate that dynamic, how we understand their message and how we respond to it. That is one of the lessons from Trump, is that candidates with right-wing, dangerous, nationalist, racist positions who are entertaining are scary as shit. Let me tell you guys a story. A few weeks ago, I made a joke on Pod Save America about Elijah canceling Campaign Experts React. I expected that immediately after the show posted, I would hear from Elijah. Show posted, nothing. Next day, nothing. After a couple of days, I texted Jon Favreau to make sure that Elijah still worked at the company. Turns out he did. 13 days after the podcast posted, I get a Slack from Elijah because he has finally learned of my joke. And where did he find out about the joke? In the YouTube comment section. If you think Elijah should do a better job and maybe listen to the podcast he works on, then tell him so by smashing that subscribe button. Okay, the next video we're going to watch is an ad from the Democratic group VoteVets targeting West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin.
I enlisted in the United States Navy, just like my dad.
8 years in, I served all over the world. I didn't fight for our country overseas.
To see our democracy taken away at home.
But that's what's happening. Government corruption and politicians in the pockets of billionaires.
Congress needs to get big money out of politics.
They need to protect the most precious thing I fought for. Our freedom to vote.
What did you think of this ad specifically? And do you think these generic issue ads can work?
I often get in trouble because I cut to the point too bluntly, but I'm getting old, so I don't give a damn. I love this ad. The broader context of the conversation that's going on in Washington right now, sort of outside of Washington, is voting rights. And literally the DNC put out talking points talking about Jim Crow 2.0. We're caught in this conversation about disenfranchisement and people of color. Here's the controversial point, but politically it's fucking spot on. They use veterans as the face of this ad. They made it about veterans and something that, quite frankly, most middle America can relate to, and by the way, have a lot of admiration for. And if this issue is about vets not being able to vote, it's a different conversation and makes it not simply about one group, but about a larger group, and puts middle America, now they have skin in the game. And one of the things we used to talk about all the time, and the guy we used to work for talked about all the time, is putting skin in the game. I think this ad puts skin in the game for a lot of middle America, the way that the current conversation dominating, where it's simply about whether or not people of color are being disenfranchised, does not. Now, that sounds cynical, but it's real politics.
I think so often political pundits and people on Twitter and the folks who look at ads think about message and they don't think about messenger, right? And so a huge part of how you make ads is having a trusted messenger deliver the message, right? That is often, if you're talking about COVID, you saw this a lot in some of the Biden campaign advertising with nurses and doctors and scientists, frontline workers, people who are trusted, right? Firefighters in the post 9/11 environment, where that was the gold standard of who you won your ad. They were the most trusted people in America. And so using veterans here to deliver a message, people who are seen in some ways as inherently less political, to deliver a message about a political reform bill, I think is very smart. We have to make a broader argument about why fixing our democracy matters to people who have no trouble voting. How does it affect their lives that this is happening? And it can't just be raw power politics, which is Democrats benefit when more people vote, so therefore this will be good for Democratic power.
I think it's smart. Now, I don't think it's going to move Joe Manchin, but I think it's...
Yeah, great plans can also fail, but doesn't mean they're not great plans, right? Cornell Belcher, thank you so much for joining us. It is always great to have you, and we will talk to you again soon.
Always my pleasure, brother.
Thanks for watching these ads and videos with us. If you see anything you'd like to see us break down on the show, please let us know in the comments.